Ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about the worst states to die in because of death taxes. If you are new here, welcome. It is great to have you. My name is Dallin Haas. I'm a financial planner who serves federal employees every single day, and I absolutely love it. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Again, today we're talking about death taxes, and another name for those. Death taxes is just a fancy way of saying either estate taxes or inheritance tax. Now, spoiler alert, most of you are not going to have to worry about death taxes because it depends on where you live and it depends on how much you have. So most of you won't, but there's going to be some of you where it's going to come into play. Now, just because you're not exempt or just because you're not exposed to death taxes doesn't mean your heirs won't pay any taxes. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But let's, again, dive right in. So I mentioned that death taxes are either estate taxes or inheritance taxes. So let's break those down. So estate taxes is a tax that your quote-unquote estate pays before the money goes to your beneficiaries, whoever you want your money to go to. Okay, so for example, let's say you want your money to go to your kids. Well, before it gets there, when it's just in your estate, right? You die, it's still technically just in your estate. That's when the taxes are paid, okay? While inheritance taxes is the opposite, where your estate may not pay taxes, but once the kids receive it, then they pay the taxes on it. So it's just a timing thing, but the net result of both of these taxes is that your heirs, whoever you want your money to go to, get less. That is the net result. But when it comes to inheritance taxes, there are very few states that has inheritance taxes. There's a lot more states and a lot more places where estate taxes come into play. But let's start with inheritance tax. So let me get you a list here of all the places with inheritance taxes. Okay, so first, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Nebraska, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So only those 6 states have an inheritance tax. Now, here's the good news. Most of the time, inheritance taxes is exempt when money is going to either spouses or kids. Okay, you can look up the details for your state. I'm not going to go into the details because the rules for all of these taxes are different in every state, but I'm going to at least tell you what states have the taxes. So then if it applies to you, you can go search out those details. Okay, so again, only 6 states have inheritance taxes. And of course, a lot more states have estate taxes and things like that, but we'll get there. So if you live in one of those states, again, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Nebraska, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, you want to look up, see, depending on where you want your money to go, whether it's your kids or whatever, you want to make sure that this doesn't apply to you and that there's nothing you have to worry about when it comes to inheritance taxes down the road for your heirs, okay? Now, let's jump to estate taxes, okay? Again, only 6 states have inheritance taxes, but now let's talk about estate taxes. So this tax, again, is paid by your estate before it goes to your heirs. Well, there is actually not just state estate taxes, there's also a federal estate tax. However, it only applies if your estate is over certain limits. And for 2023, let me find the most current amount. So your estate would have to be bigger than $12.92 million. And if you're married, double that. Okay. So again, when it comes to a federal estate taxes, you probably aren't going to owe estate taxes. If you have more than $13 million, congratulations, right? Congratulations, you reached that threshold. But again, most of you are not going to have estate taxes on the federal level. Now, that limit does change over time, and it used to be a lot smaller, but we'll keep you updated as that changes, okay? But now let's jump to estate taxes on the state level. Again, estate taxes on the state level. So there are a list of states that have estate taxes, okay? Let me go through them. First, Connecticut, DC, District of Columbia. Next, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. So the list for those that have estate taxes is a little longer. However, just like on the federal level, it only kicks in. You only have to pay estate taxes if your estate, if you're passed it on over certain limits. However, For some of the states, the limits are much, much lower than on the federal level. For example, for Oregon, if you have more than $1 million in your estate, you will be paying estate taxes. Now, again, what I recommend, if you live in one of the states that I mentioned, look it up. Just Google, say, hey, what is the estate tax in Connecticut or Illinois or wherever you're at? You can find the details there. Again, this is just an introduction, so you kind of know what to expect or not to expect, okay? So again, some states have very, very high limits before it applies. For example, in New York, you have to have more than $6.5 million in your estate before any estate taxes come into play. But definitely keep that in mind. Again, find your state, Google, do some research to find if any of these things are going to apply to you. Now, with that being said, now that we've touched on inheritance taxes, estate taxes, both on the federal and state level, does that mean, let's say you're under these limits and you don't have to, maybe you don't live in a state that has inheritance or estate taxes. Maybe you say, okay, I'm clear, I'm good to go. Does that mean your heirs, let's say your kids, aren't going to pay any taxes on the money they receive? And the answer is no, that's not what that means, okay? It means you may be exempt from inheritance and estate taxes, but what about income taxes, okay? For example, let's say you have a big chunk of money in your traditional TSP when you die. And let's say your beneficiaries are your kids. Well, when they receive that money, when they use it, when they take it out of the account, they are going to have to pay income taxes because that traditional TSP you had, that's pre-tax money, right? You never paid taxes on it. The government says, hey, we want to get our taxes. So when they pull the money out of the account, that is when the taxes have to be paid. So again, it doesn't mean just because you don't have, let's say, estate taxes or inheritance taxes, doesn't mean your heirs won't pay any taxes. They may have to pay income taxes depending on what you are giving them, what you are bequeathing to them, right? Whether it's a retirement account, whether it's a house, the rules are different depending on what type of asset you are giving them. So I hope this helps. This is just an introduction again to how these things work, but keep in mind the rules and the limits, the exclusions for all of these things, they change over time. So you want to keep updated, at least in your state, every so often, maybe look it up and say, hey, what are the estate taxes for Illinois or whatever you want? Insert your state here, right? I hope that's helpful. Give you an idea that first and foremost, very few people actually do end up paying estate taxes or inheritance taxes because of the few states that actually have them and the rules that exclude most people. Okay, you have to have a large amount of money in certain states, and then you would pay inheritance or estate taxes. So I hope that's helpful. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you guys next time.